I'm seriously going to start writing in our book.
You should. I think it's gonna have to take somebody to kick it off.
Yeah, I'm gonna start writing because yeah.
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 2 of 2023. Happy New Year to Brian. We're about to get hurricane-level rain and winds here in Northern California today, so I hope to have power to edit this episode. With me, I have my co-host, Duke Silver, who only has to worry about the occasional cricket or jackrabbit sneaking into his house.
Yeah, I don't know about a jackrabbit, but definitely some other critters around there. And why is it just Happy New Year just to Brian, by the way? I don't understand.
Yeah, what the hell? What the heck?
Because I said, if you remember last week, I said Happy New Year to everyone except Brian, but this week Brian gets the Happy New Year.
I feel special. I'm the pretty one today.
You should feel special, Brian. Special K.
And we have Glenn Medina also bunkering down for this hurricane. Glenn, is your pool covered up yet?
Hey, pool is not covered up technically. You could, but with the amount of rain that's coming down, I prefer to leave it open because if you left the pool closed and water got on top of it, it could cave in and ruin the pool cover. So the tendency is to have the pool open during rain. Bunkering down and hurricane? Really? I think 40, 50 miles per hour, that's not hurricane level, is it?
Not if you ask an East Coaster, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's just somebody with bad gas over in Arizona.
I think that's something like an Anderson Cooper, just like over exaggeration, right? If you...
The guy walking at a 45-degree angle, and then someone in the foreground walking by normally.
or him standing in the ditch doing the news, and then the guy's walking in the parking lot in the backyard,
Or when Chris says it's hot outside and it's 88, I'm like,
yeah,
that's nothing.
Oh yeah. I was looking for hurricane news last night after you had said that, Chris, and I didn't find anything. I was like, what is Chris talking about? And I was like, oh, there's this storm coming, but they're not even calling it a tropical storm. So, but you're right, it is pretty strong wind.
Yeah, it's bad enough here. They already preemptively canceled school for my city. The kids will be home.
That's because no one in San Francisco can drive. Let's just say that straight, right?
How's that?
Let me just say
Our
that.
infrastructure is so bad. There's a video of like a Best Buy literally underwater because the drainage and infrastructure in the city is so bad.
Yeah. Well,
Chris was up late last night loosening his the roof shingles on his house, hoping that the hurricane will take it away with it.
Yeah, and the insurance will buy me a new roof. Definitely not insurance fraud. I'm not admitting to any fraud on this podcast.
And let's be honest, the drains are flooded because of all the hypodermic needles and poop that's sitting inside the streets that are getting washed away now. So, be honest here.
Probably. Well, no guest this week due to the nature of the topic we'll be discussing today. It's just going to be the three of us.
Actually, real quick, I figured out Todd's nickname. It's Bigfoot. He's rarely seen, right? There's clearly no evidence of him, with the exception of like once. Yeah, Sasquatch. Yeah. Just one sketchy podcast where he just came up out of nowhere and talked about rear naked chokeholds.
We can call him. We can call him the Malicorn.
We'll see which one he wants. Is it going to be the Malicorn, Bigfoot, or Sasquatch? One of them, I guess.
Combined, we have decades of information security experience here, not just to educate, but to entertain. We've got one fantastic story for you today, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Go and check out our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/@PEBCAK Podcast. Got a bunch of videos up. All the new episodes are definitely going to be there. I'm going to start slowly posting our back episodes. And another reminder, send us an email to podcast@chrislouis.net for the Ask Me Anything questions that we will try and answer on our 100th episode. Today, we're going to open the show with some closing the loop on eggs. Then we'll launch into a very special episode of the PEBCAK Podcast, and we'll be discussing the Twitter files for the entire episode today. Due to the heavy nature of the topic we'll be talking about today, We're going to open with a dad joke, and you'll see why. We continue to get great comments about our dad joke of the week.
Dad joke of the week.
This week we have a special appearance for our dad joke. We're having family dinner last night, then out of the blue, totally unsolicited, my son whips out this zinger, and it was too cute not to use this week. I recorded it so I can play it for you. Cue the clip.
What do you call a bear that has no teeth? A gummy bear.
That's cute. That's a good one. Wow, that's awesome.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Just out of the blue.
We should get a whole bunch of views just because of that.
Like father,
Yeah.
like son.
Exactly.
That's it.
Alright, closing the loop this week. A report came out this week that the nationwide average for the price of a dozen eggs is $4.50. And no, it's not avian flu that's driving up the prices. It's energy cost, feed cost, and bird cost have soared due to inflation.
I saw that last night at the grocery store. It was at Safeway, and went to go grab some eggs, and it was like $8.99, $9.99. I'm like, what the hell? Like, Chris was right. Apparently, it is expensive. I found the off-brand for like I think $3.99, but I don't think I've ever spent that kind of money for eggs before. It was only for a 12-pack.
It's milk, bread, eggs, butter. Have you guys like a stick of, like a, one box of butter is like $7 also. So
Yeah,
it is
crazy
ridiculously going up.
Cue in the Dave Chappelle. That's crack prices. Like, wow.
Makes me want to go get my own chickens, but I don't want to deal with chickens. So
I would
Wake
actually
you up every morning.
I would consider it because chickens they like to eat scorpions, and scorpions are a big problem in Arizona.
is there enough of them
And
that they can
crickets.
eat without having to add feed?
No, you just have to add some feed, but then on the off chance you get some free
Scorpion control.
free scorpion control and free eggs. I mean, that's not that bad of a deal. I actually got stung by a scorpion, like for the first time in my life, and I had no idea. I woke up, my arm felt kind of weird. I'm like, what the heck? And I was like, I'm big and goofy, right? And I was like, it's 3:00 in the morning, and I'm trying to like look in the mirror to see, like, it was like right by my armpit, and I can't really see, and I'm like trying to wake up, and all of a sudden, like, my spine starts tick like not really a tickle, but it's like poking all over. I'm like, what the heck's going on? So then I'm scratching my back on the wall like a giant bear that just had a feast. I'm like, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck is going on in
See
here.
the scorpion sticking on your back.
Well, no, I went back into the bed, and I was like, I must have gotten poked by something, and I look on the bed, and sure enough, there's a little scorpion right there. I'm like, little SOB. So then I chopped him up into pieces and left his body scattered throughout the house. Just to let his friends know, don't mess with the
sign.
teach.
You chew them
that's
up
a
and have
sign
your
to the
little tail sticking out of your mouth like that? No.
No. They do taste like bacon grease, though, if you've ever had one.
Ugh.
Never had the pleasure of having one. Maybe one will come visit you, Deech. I'll get scorpions.
See, all he needs is a black light, baby.
For our first and only topic this week, we'll be talking about the Twitter files. This topic will have extensive citations since people believe this to be a politically charged topic. What we'll be talking about will be 100% factual based on actual evidence unearthed at Twitter HQ. What are the Twitter files, you may ask? Well, to answer that, we have to go back in time to October 2020. The world was in lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. Our major cities were burning to the ground due to civil unrest protesting police brutality. And Donald Trump and Joe Biden were locked in a neck-and-neck election to become the next president of the United States. The New York Post breaks a bombshell story that a laptop, a MacBook Pro, belonging to Hunter Biden, the son of then presidential candidate Joe Biden, was abandoned in a Delaware computer repair shop, handed over to law enforcement, and in possession of the U.S. FBI.
Hey, Chris, can I stop you real quick? So before we even get into this, like, one thing that needs to be abundantly clear, because I've talked with a bunch of people about the Twitter files, and if you're on the right, you're just like, the conspiracy theories were true. And if you're on the left, the perception is like this is kind of like more fake news. But it's not. Like, this is like a clear like government overreach thing. And I think no matter which side of the fence you're on, you should pay attention to this. right? And don't look at it as like either my team won or my team lost on this, and this is my vested interest. Just like at least read through it and pay attention. And I think the most upsetting stuff, right, is that it's out there, but you go out to like Yahoo and or CNN, and there's no talks period about anything about the Twitter files, but anything else that's Elon Musk is related. So it lends a hand into this whole like there is censorship going on. Who's the one that's actually doing it? And that's kind of the scary part about this. So I don't think that anyone in particular won from maybe like we'll call it an election standpoint. I think we all lost. And this is clearly evident in the Twitter files. So with that said, I guess I'm just pleading with everyone that's listening, no matter which side of the fence you're on, just kind of go into this with like an open mind and hear it out. And I think you'll be surprised.
Yeah, I'll agree with you as well. I'm glad we brought it back a little bit because, again, no matter what political affiliation you have, it's bad when you have censorship from, a company or corporation that allows for public speaking or a platform. And then, just however you read the files, whether you believe that the government was involved in any of that censorship or not, it's something that, if we talk about at a smaller, at a bigger level, something like into like China and Taiwan is going on right now, things that are going on over there that people probably should be paying attention to, right? That probably have their head in the sand because they don't want to believe that something like that is going on.
Make a great correlation there, man. This is just kind of how it starts, I think.
Yeah.
And by the way, I haven't read through all the show notes, but it's clearly evident that both Democrats and Republicans have the ability to contact Twitter and to selectively remove people or ban them or mute them or whatever you want to call it. So again, this isn't just one side of the fence. This is both sides are equally screwing with everybody here, and I'm not a huge fan of it at all.
Yeah.
So back to you, Chris. I'm sorry, man, but I think we needed to kind of do a little level set on this because you're right. This is a politically charged type of thing. We don't want to turn away people. Let's keep going to it with an open mind.
And that's one of the conclusions too, is that just because you might feel a way and you feel like your side won, but you'll flip it on the other side. What if Twitter started banning people that were on your side for no apparent reason or without breaking the rules? There's always that saying that you want to give the people in power now certain powers, but what if your power is not in power anymore? What if your party's not in power? But there's that saying that if your party is in power, you want to give them all this power, give them surveillance capability, give them the ability to censor their political opponents. What happens when your party's not in power anymore? Now your opponent has the ability to censor people that they don't agree with. So it's important to look at the framework from a nonpartisan perspective. Should any political party have this power, whether it's your side or the other side? So I think you guys bring up a good point that look at it through that lens, and it happened to land on one party in this case, but what if it happened to your party?
Exactly. Thank you, Chris. So yeah, let's get back into it, but should be fun.
All right, so going back to this laptop, the laptop that Hunter Biden had and is now in possession of the US FBI, the laptop allegedly contained extremely damaging information on the former vice president and his family. There were files relating to corruption and crooked deals brokered by the Bidens in Ukraine, where Hunter Biden worked as a board member of the oil and gas company Burisma, despite having no experience in Ukraine or oil and gas. Emails show bribes, payoffs, evidence of shady and illegal business dealings, cash for influence implicating the former vice president, and there were photos of Hunter Biden smoking crack, humiliating women, and without getting too graphic, there was a treasure trove of information that the Biden campaign did not want released 2 weeks before the election.
Which is wild because you talk to some people and they're like, the only thing that was on that laptop was some dude partying, right? And like doing some drugs, like nobody cares. But the reality is there's a lot more on it than we were led to believe. And the bribes is definitely something that I don't know that it would have changed the election, but I wish I would have known.
Yeah. The newspaper, the New York Post, posted the story about the laptop and its contents, and Twitter immediately banned the account of the Post, took down the story, and stopped anyone from resharing, mentioning the story, or even DMing about the story. That's a tool normally reserved for extreme cases such as child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. At the time, it appeared to be a major censorship to prevent damage to the Biden campaign. Now, Twitter's defense for stopping the spread and reach of the story was that the data found on Hunter Biden's laptop was hacked and violated Twitter's policy of posting information obtained through illegal hacking. Later, they would change their story that the Hunter Biden laptop was part of a Russian disinformation campaign, and censoring the story was meant to stop the spread of misinformation. As the way Twitter goes, the rest of the major social media platforms, Facebook, Snapchat, and the like, all banned the story and suppressed it.
Where do we start? I mean, I'm looking through a lot of my notes. The fact that you can have, whether it be shadow ban or not, the de-amplification is some of the things that I've read as well. And it's just going down to, if we're just talking about censorship, right? The fact that there was some level of censorship here where, no one was allowed to talk about it on a platform. And I akin this to, I don't know if you guys, I like to watch a lot of Hitler up and coming stories, like, and read about it and watch it, where the history of Hitler when he was coming up, where they would do things where they would bring their SS goons, and if anyone was on the streets talking bad about, the Nazis, they would beat them up. And this is basically what they did was, in coincidence, right, is that anyone who talked about this was hushed. And not hushed in a physical nature, but hushed in a virtual nature inside of, the Twitter jail, right? Because no one was allowed to repost, or the control of that was prevented.
Yeah, not just Twitter. Like, Twitter started a lot of this, and if we talk about Twitter files 3, 4, and 5 later, Twitter started it, but every social media platform followed. So Facebook, Snapchat, any other platform, this story was banned from it. So like you said, Glenn, it effectively censored people. Not just Twitter, but you could not talk about this story anywhere.
Yeah.
Even on Reddit. I mean, every news outlet, all mainstream media, whether it was on TV or their website, right? It was just not there. It was just missing. Yeah. And you have to wonder who's going to be, like, obviously we don't want Russian interference on stuff. We need to figure out who's going to be the gatekeeper of truth when it comes to this information. And if the FBI is coming to Twitter and saying, hey, we believe that this is disinformation, then, like, like, are you going to call them liars? But at the same time, I guess we can. Like, it's a weird line. It's like, who do you get to trust? And I think was it you, Glenn, that was just like, take any conspiracy theory and wait long enough, you'll find out that it was actually true. Like, if it's any 3-letter agency that's out there.
At some level, yeah. But and I don't know the timeline of this, and I have to go look. I probably have to go close the loop on this. Is this Jim Baker, right, was with the FBI at that time as as one of the guys that was lead FBI guys over there, and it ends up working for Twitter. Like, is that a coincidence? What's going on here? That leads to ultimately more conspiracy theories. That, if it sounds like a duck and it quacks like a duck, guess what, guys? It's a stinking duck.
Yeah, we didn't talk much about Jim Baker here, but Jim Baker was a former FBI official who really, really pushed the Steele dossier, which was disproved, and that was the evidence used at the FISA court to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump's campaign. And he was really pushing that, knowing that it was debunked, the evidence they were using. And then he moves to Twitter, and as some weird twist, Jim Baker still worked at Twitter, and he actually vetted part 1 of the Twitter files, which was a total, complete conflict of interest because he's implicated in a lot of these things. And as soon as Elon Musk found out, he walked him out the door.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And if you're listening to this, and this is all net new news to you, not the Twitter files, but just the fact that Twitter had the ability to deplatform people, to hide news. If you never heard about anything regarding the laptop, other than was this some dude maybe smoking some crack, and a couple pictures with some women, then you should look into this a little bit closer.
I just want to, how do I get that job? Like, a job where I have no business being in, and I get to smoke crack and have fun. Like, what do I have to do that? Do I have to have a father that's in politics?
Pretty much, yeah.
You're going to get us in trouble now.
Had to push your button, Brian.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to like turn people off too much, from our own personal views on this. So, anyways.
All right. Well, now you know the background. We can talk about the various parts of the drops of the Twitter files. So far, as of today, there have been 11 drops of the Twitter files, and this is a 40-minute podcast, so there's no way we'll get through all of them. We'll be covering parts 1, 2, and 6, as they are the most interesting ones so far. If this episode's well received, we can do feature episodes on the other parts. The Twitter files are a series of news reports that were released by Elon Musk after he completed the purchase of Twitter for $54 billion. Elon Musk ordered an internal investigation on how the company handled the Biden laptop story and found major inconsistencies in Twitter's official story of why they censored it. So let's start with part 1.
By the way, you should mention it wasn't actually Elon doing it. He had independent third-party companies coming in and doing this. So I think everyone was either someone that was more left viewed and then right viewed, right? Is that how it was?
Yeah, he wanted it to be fair. He didn't want anyone pointing the finger and saying the person wasn't impartial, which is exactly why he fired Jim Baker, was because Jim Baker was vetting his own information and censoring things in the Twitter files, and then Elon Musk said no way and walked him out the door.
By the way, when you go through here and look at this stuff, the first thing you should be doing is, number 1, when I'm on my work computer, should I ever write anything that I don't want to be divulged out to the world? Like, I cannot be any more shocked that this information was still there. You think they would have been like, oh crap, we need to delete it at some point. But no, it was all logged, and there was evidence of it everywhere.
It's the great thing about Slack, right? It's searchable, right? It's a platform that gets recorded because it's just like email. It's legal hold information.
Yeah.
It's archived for all time.
Yeah, that's it.
It's wild.
Yeah. Unlike Signal.
All right, for part 1 was published by a writer, Matt Taibbi, who writes for a Substack. He is a far-left reporter who wrote for a far-left publication, the Rolling Stone. Yes, that Rolling Stone magazine that glorified terrorism against the U.S. by putting the Boston Marathon bomber on their front cover. I believe Elon Musk chose him for that reason, so no one could argue that he had picked a right-wing publication to spin the story. The Twitter Files Part 1 outlines with ample evidence an uncomfortably cozy relationship between Twitter and one specific political party, the Democrats. There were internal emails from the DNC, which is the Democratic National Committee, to Twitter employees asking them to delete certain tweets. Both celebrities and unknowns could be removed or reviewed at the behest of a political party. And as Brian mentioned earlier, technically, both political parties had access to these tools and employees, but the Twitter staff was extremely one-sided. Public records show that 99.73% of all political donations of Twitter employees went to the Democrats. After the Biden laptop story was published, it was taken down on the grounds on their hacked material policy, but Twitter knew that would not hold up and no one wanted to go back on that decision. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany had her account suspended for even referencing this news story. The DNC was in full panic mode trying to erase the story off the internet and were consistently sending Twitter more accounts to ban or delete to stop the spread.
I thought what was interesting when they banned they suspended Kayleigh's account.
Yeah.
On the back end, it was like, yeah, let's just toy with her for like the next 10 days or 2 weeks. I can't remember what it was, but they're just like, this lead her on basically, or lead the Republicans on. Like, well, we'll come back eventually. And when you look at this, I think this gives more credibility to the Hunter Biden leak, right? Like, why were they trying so hard to get rid of it? Like, really, what was on there? And that's the damning evidence at the end of the day.
And I would say, so I have to play devil's advocate a little bit here, is the DNC would say that this is a Russian disinformation campaign, so very similar to what happened to Hillary Clinton in 2016. They would say, this is a fake story. You're spreading misinformation to try to swing the election. The Russians are interfering. that could have been the position of the DNC at the time. We know now that it's not, but at the time, that's what they could have spun it as to Twitter. It says you're swaying this election due to misinformation. You got to do what you got to do to stop it.
Yeah, I get disinformation, right? Because I think we all knew that somehow, some way, Russia was interfering with the elections from the very onset, right? If you look at a lot of the data that was out there, even within Facebook or some of the other platforms, but you've got to be able to go back and look at it and go, okay, you know, can we really identify the sources and information side here? And you know, when I look at this, it looks like, you know, one comment they said they just freelanced it, you know, how one former employee characterized the decision of deplatforming or deplatform or just shadow banning them, right? This is like, and you go back after the excuse of hacking. I mean, who does that, right? If CNN or any of the other major news outlets did that, it'd be an uproar, right? And maybe there is now, and that's just the way we are, is that people start reporting things, and it's just like reading the tabloids now. When I watch the news, I just don't even pay attention anymore.
Well, they should be in uproar, but this information's not getting out there.
Yeah.
Period. Like, no one's talking about it. It's messed up. And I'm going to relate this to a recent story, at least from the Deach household perspective, right? So there's a gentleman, I think he was a lightweight kickboxer, Andrew Tate. He's pretty polarizing person. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's on
Reddit
video.
Hates him.
Yeah. So he's on video of saying, like, you know, like when he got canceled, he goes like, you know, I just wasted one of my 3 lives. The first one, they cancel you. The second one, they try to get you in jail. And the third one, they try to kill you. And you're like, oh, this dude's like clearly a conspiracy theorist, right? Then what happens? He's arrested in some foreign country for human trafficking. Right?
Romania. Yeah.
Romania. Thank you. And from my perspective, all I want is the truth, right? Like if he did it, like if he actually is doing human trafficking in Romania, then like let's lock him up, right? But if this is like some sort of, you know, fabricated story that's not actually true, all I really want is the truth. Like, did he actually do this? Yes or no? Same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop, or the people that are posting information, even when it's around COVID. I just want to know the truth at the end of the day, period. That's all I want.
You watch a lot of these, right? You go through movies and they talk about the stories that never get told because the American public is not ready for that. What would be the damage if we had heard this beforehand? And, you know, what do they believe the damage is to the American public or the American, you know, the United States itself when news like this comes out? Is it so damning that we just go and we spiral out of control and we lose our democracy and everything just gets crazy?
Well, they throw you into these echo chambers, right? The goal is to get you on the platform and to stay on there, right?
Yeah.
And if I put in, like, for me, I want to see conflicting information, right? I want to see the good and the bad about everything. But unfortunately, whatever I am currently eyeballing, right, is going to be the only thing that I see, because it's in their best interest to keep me on that platform. So keep spoon feeding me the information that I want to see, right? And not all of the information. Please give me everything, right?
Yeah.
And so for these people go ahead.
No, please.
And that's the problem, right? And I've seen this in person. So online, maybe my views, the stuff that I share, or the things that I talk about, would put me into, you know, left or right in one way or the other. And recently, I went into headquarters to do a training event for new hires, and there was a gentleman there that he unfollowed me from Instagram, probably because we're conflicting. So when I seen him, I was like, hey, you know, like I'm not afraid of nobody, right? I want to show him that we could be friends. But online, on the internet, right? Like, I'm in this echo chamber, and I say whatever I want. I post and I ghost, right? And then like my views are my views. So we sat down, and I was like, and I can tell like he was uncomfortable just being in my presence. And I was just like, whatever, like, we're just going to have a civil conversation. Like, it doesn't, like, just because you believe one thing doesn't mean that we can't. And so it was my goal to figure out something that we can agree on, right? And we went back and forth on you name it, right? Like, there was this, like, and on paper, like, if you took a picture of me and him, you're like, those guys got to be best friends. They look identical. But no, like we were just the polar opposites in our thinking. But the one thing that we came across was some type of music genre. We were like, you know what, this is actually pretty good, right? And it was not the country music that you would find on the radio, but there's this some kind of country, like Chris Stapleton. I think we kind of agreed on it. And I think the craziest outcome, because he's very outspoken in his thinking, after new hire thing that we went through and we were teaching class together, 2 days after that he followed me back on Instagram. So
yeah,
you tell me.
I think what people fail to miss is it's okay to disagree, right? That hey, we can have different views. You can believe in one thing, I can believe in another, but at the end of the day I'll still get along with you because I still think you're a human being. I mean, heck, I still talk to the both of you even though I know you guys are crazy, but
And you're 100% right. Like that, our difference is what really makes us unique. That's what makes us all special at the end of the day. And I think that the COVID, the lockdown, and I'm not saying anything negative about it, but I'm just saying having been stuck in all of our houses for Lord knows how long, and that missing social interaction, and then on top of that, you're being spoon fed the information that they think you want to see, puts us into that echo chamber where we're stuck in our ways, and we look at people that are different than us and just instantly hate them, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, I don't like it when people try to control me with the wrong information. Just provide me the right information. And I think I was going to allude to this was, what happened, 30, 40 years ago when you could watch the news and it was like, this is what happened on this date. This is, the facts of how it happened. That we understand. We don't have the rest of the story, but you come to your own conclusion on what happened, right? I don't want someone telling me, well, it was a terrorist. Well, how do you know it was a terrorist? Or it was someone that was leaning either left or right that caused this riot. Well, how do you know? Like, you don't have any of those facts. Just tell me what happened, and I'll come to my own conclusion.
Yeah, it's the 24-hour news cycle, I think, is to blame. That people want to be the first to report it. Like, when the Boston Marathon bombing happened and Twitter did all this internet sleuthing and they got the wrong guy, I think that was the start of it, or evidence of this. But, yeah, like you said, Glenn, it says you can't just report like there's some crazy serial killer out there. Like, you have to know what was that serial killer's political affiliation. Like, why is that important in this? No, this guy's crazy and he killed a bunch of people. I don't need to know who he liked or who he voted for. But everything is tied back to that now.
Can you imagine? Like, he also had some raviolis on him, so Italian people, they're the worst.
Legislature. We need legislature on the news. Maybe that's what it comes down to.
Government
but
controlling the media.
Who's really to say, maybe I'm skating on thin ice here, but who's to say that the news 30, 40 years ago was actually not being controlled?
I don't know. Maybe it was a simpler time in my head because I was a kid and I didn't know any better. But I just remember there wasn't a lot of opinions back then. If there was an opinion, it was an opinion page on the newspaper that you can go read about, right? But for the most part, it was like, state the facts, state what's going on. The who, what, when, where was how I was taught in school on how you reported something.
By the way, so go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think the difference is opinion shows, because you can tune into a news channel, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, what have you. You can tune in, and there are news shows, and there are opinion shows. So shows like Sean Hannity, Rachel Maddow, those are opinion shows. They're not news shows. Like Britt Baer on Fox is probably the most neutral, and he actually reports the news. It's not an opinion show. I think people get confused at that because I'm watching a news channel that this is reporting the news. Like, it's actually an opinion show, and it's not presented that way. It's presented as news.
I think you're more than right if you look at those things. Like, but when you watch a weathercast, just like we opened up with earlier today, Chris, it's seeing this, hey, torrential rain's coming, it's a hurricane. It's like, it's not a hurricane, like by any stretch of the mean. It's just like saying, like, hey, we had an earthquake in California, then all of a sudden everyone calls and says, hey, are you guys okay? Yeah, the earthquake was like, 50 miles away from me. It had nothing to do with me. And it's, it's the same thing. It's this amplification of something that's horrible, when in reality it's like, hey, it's 50-mile-an-hour winds. It's going to be about 2 inches of rain today. Be careful out there, because Californians can't drive.
I think we can say that about every state, to be honest with you. Ground gets wet, everyone turns into pure chaos. Oh, I'm just looking at my notes here, and one of the things that I wanted to call out. How do you say Matt's last name? Is it Tabby?
I think it's Tabby.
Tabby. So shout out to him, right? Like I think he went out on a limb to do the right thing, right? And I think that kind of went maybe against all things, and I think maybe his Thanksgiving was a little awkward. And I'm appreciative to him to do that, right? And I think that we need more people like him that are willing to go out and just kind of stick to the facts. Like, here's the actual evidence. This is what we saw. And to present it to us in a fashion that's easily digestible, that isn't fabricated or jaded one way or the other. And I think he did a great job with it. And I think he did more than just Twitter Files 1, 3, and 5, right? I think he actually did he does every other one.
Yeah, there's a great quote in The Wire. I mean, that show is pretty old, but it still stands the test of time. It's in The Wire season 5, when they talk about the press, there's a scene that says, our job, and this is a guy that works at the Baltimore Sun and Newspaper, he says, our job is to report the news, not manufacture it. And that's exactly the same problem we're in today. There's just all these companies that are news companies. They're just manufacturing news. They're manufacturing outrage. And this isn't a left-right thing. This is an everybody thing. They're just manufacturing it. They want what, a news channel is a cable channel. A cable channel is funded by ads. Ads are funded by eyeballs and views. What can I do to get the most people to watch my channel? Well, I'll say more and more outrageous things, more polarizing things, and like I said, Brian, just becomes a giant echo chamber.
It's dangerous. Dangerous for everybody.
All right, well, we haven't lost everybody yet. We've only gone through part 1, so let's I don't know if we'll get through part 6, but let's at least cover part 2, because part 2 is pretty interesting. So part 2 of the Twitter Files was released by Barry Weiss. She's a conservative reporter and the editor of the Free Press. So part 1 was covered by someone left-leaning. Part 2 is covered by someone right-leaning. Part 2 deals more with the conservatives in general and how they were treated on the platform. So we're talking about Twitter. For the record, the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, and their head of legal and policy and trust, Vaja Gadi, made repeated claims that Twitter does not shadow ban, even in front of the U.S. Congress in 2018. Shadow banning is the act of banning someone without telling them they're banned. So our show got shadow banned when we talked about Flat Earth, funny enough. I didn't know that I was banned on LinkedIn, and it wasn't until we couldn't figure out why our views were so low and why Brian and Glenn couldn't see the story, but I could. But yeah, so LinkedIn shadow banned me. They didn't tell me. The problem with shadow banning is there's no transparency because we're never told that we've been shadow banned, and they're not evenly enforced. Remember, 99+% of Twitter employees donated to Democrats, which leads to unfair enforcement. And number 3, shadow banning or search banning feels underhanded. Just outright block people and say why.
So was Jack and Vijay, were they both under oath when they testified?
I was thinking the exact same thing, Brian. They should be called back to Congress. Yeah.
Not that Congress is like. Oh no, never mind. No comment on that. But I mean, still, Jesus, come on.
There's an oath, right? There's an oath there.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be truthful, and if you knew that in 2018, right? When this happened, that's an outrage. That's an outright lie. That's terrible.
It is and it isn't, because yes, Jack was not telling the truth, but I'd have to go and see exactly what he said, because they could pull the whole big tobacco defense. Remember when big tobacco was up in front of Congress? He says, I do believe nicotine is not addictive. And then that could be your belief. That's the truth. So if Jack Dorsey said, I believe we do not shadow ban conservatives, he could have been telling the truth, because he might not have known. Yoel Roth, his head of trust and safety, he was heavily involved in this. It might not have bubbled up to Jack. It's possible.
Switching gears, right? When we look, one thing that's kind of like, as a technologist, Twitter's ability to, 1, to create your echo chamber, and then 2, to really control everything on that platform is astounding. Like, in a great way. Like, I think it's awesome that they have the ability to know how many times someone's been flagged, or they do not amplify, or other crazy stats that are on there. They have insane control over their platform. which means I think that they can actually start to sway stuff. So if you look at it, and I think maybe it was you, Chris, and I think maybe we were just talking, like when it comes down to voting, right? Half the people that, or I should say half, there's a certain amount of the population that will always vote left. There's a certain amount of population that will always vote right. And so you have those people that are kind of right there in the middle. Maybe they're single vote, single issue vote voters, I guess, is the way I could say that.
Yeah.
And if you cater to those people in particular, you could have control over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's, like you said, there's states that always vote blue, there's states that always vote red, and then it's those swing states, those purple states. That's where all the candidates spend their time. That's where they spend all their issues, because you want to sway those either independents or undecideds, and those happen to be in those swing states.
I'll be honest with you guys. I believe that this worked on me in previous elections. I think that I looked at previous candidates that I voted for, and I voted for just based off of the information that I was getting. Right, I didn't do my homework, I didn't do my research on it, but I was enamored by the way that they presented. I was like, oh, you know what? Seems like a legit dude. I'm gonna vote. My vote's going with him.
Yeah, and that gets to the point of Twitter Files Part 2. So Twitter employees built blacklists. They prevented disfavored tweets from trending and actively limited the visibility of entire accounts or even trending topics, all in secret without informing their users. And there's a couple examples of this happening. When there's plenty of screenshots to back them up. Everything will be linked through. One thing you brought up, Brian, was the COVID lockdown. So Stanford's Jay Bhattacharya, who argued that COVID lockdowns would harm children, and a couple of years after the pandemic, we have indisputable evidence that the COVID lockdowns did harm children. We had the largest drop in test scores ever recorded during the lockdown period. Twitter secretly placed him on a trends blacklist, which prevented his tweets from trending. So there's this guy out there, he's voicing his own opinion. He says, I believe that COVID lockdowns are bad for kids. And Twitter just single-handedly said, we're just not going to amplify that message, or we're not going to allow him to trend on Twitter. And even though it was his own opinion, and people are allowed to have their own opinion, but they didn't want this to trend.
I'm certain. Right. I was going to say, I don't have a lot of friends, but my wife, she has a lot of friends. And a lot of our friends, they have kids that are going back to school, and younger generations of children, I would say first grade to maybe junior high, middle school. And the overwhelming consensus since we've been going back to school is that, man, these kids are getting sick a lot more frequently than they ever had previous. Now, I don't know that I can say that that's true, or if the COVID lockdowns outside of just bad test scores had any effect on it. But you start to wonder, like, maybe being locked up and in, stuck in your house, you're not exposed to those different things that help produce antibodies for other type of illnesses, and these kids are just getting sick left and right all the time now.
Yeah, not just their immune system, but child depression in children skyrocketed. The prescription of stimulants like ADHD medication to children skyrocketed right after these lockdowns. I believe it's indisputable that these lockdowns were bad for kids.
You guys have never had Asian parents before. Lockdowns are just
I most certainly did not.
No, you can't go out. We have no money. No, you can't go out with your friends. You have to come home. So it was actually, it's very close. But it's kind of, I had the opposite effect, right? I mean, not necessarily, I know my kids had, my youngest had a hard time with the lockdown. But from an aspect of getting sick, it was great. I tell you what, in the last 3 years, I've not really gotten a cold, because I'm not in front of other people per se, or have the ability to, because when I do go out, I was wearing a mask as well, right? So for those that wear a mask, good. If you don't, good. Doesn't matter, right? But from an aspect
it's that
of being
and the constant washing of your hands, I think that's something
Yeah.
that COVID changed. Like, everybody religiously washes their hands and sanitizes now, which
Are you guys shaking hands now with people?
Which we know why Brian got COVID twice is because he was licking doorknobs and shaking hands and licking his hands right after. So
delicious.
Yummy.
Are you guys shaking people's hands today when you go meet customers?
Yeah, I have no problems with that. Do you?
I am, but I'm acutely aware when I do, and I don't touch my face or eat anything until I sanitize.
That's right. That's exactly it. If I touch anything, like the minute I get into my car, I sanitize my hands. When I go to the grocery store, I sanitize the shopping cart and clean my hands at the same time. So
I'm the opposite. I'm a shark. I spend half my life looking for food, the other half eating it. I walk up to somebody, I have a hamburger in my hand, I put it into my left hand, shake their hand, then put the hamburger right back in my right hand, and continue eating, baby.
You're that guy.
I'm that guy.
That's awesome, though. I mean, you've probably built up a whole bunch of immunity at this point, right? So, yeah.
Probably.
All right, there's one more account I want to cover here. I don't think we're going to get to part 6 today, but I do want to cover this because this is interesting, and you'll see why. One of the accounts that rose to a level of scrutiny of Do Not Amplify or a Trends Blacklist was the account called Libs of TikTok. So it's a Twitter account, but it was called Libs of TikTok. So a little background on the Libs of TikTok. The account literally takes TikTok videos that left-leaning people post, and they just repost them with a joke or some kind of snarky comment underneath it. Like, there are videos of people defending pedophilia, and the account just posts exactly what they say completely unedited. They don't go in and change what they said. They post it unedited. But an internal memo from October 2022, after the account owner, it's a female, so after her 7th suspension, so they've been suspended 7 times on the platform, the committee acknowledged that the Libs of TikTok account has not directly engaged in behavior that violates the hateful conduct policy, because she's literally just reposting what people say. But the committee justified her suspensions internally by claiming her posts encourage online harassment of hospitals and medical providers by insinuating that, quote, gender-affirming healthcare is equivalent to child abuse or grooming, unquote. Now, compare this to what happened when the owner of the account, Libs of TikTok, herself was doxxed in November of 2022. And doxing is the act of publishing someone's address or phone number with the intent to sick the internet on them. A photo of her home with her address was posted in a tweet that garnered more than 10,000 likes. The owner of the Libs of TikTok account asked Twitter that the post be removed in accordance with Twitter's own anti-doxing policy. That request was denied and the tweet was allowed to stay. So you can clearly see the difference in enforcement when a tweet makes liberals look bad or if the tweet endangers the life of someone just making fun of liberals. Their global head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, is quoted in internal emails and Slack messages asking staff to look for loopholes to ban conservatives on the platform who technically did not break any rules, citing, quote, civic integrity.
If that doesn't make you sick to your stomach, I don't know what should or could. Maybe the one chip challenge, Glenn.
Sorry, man. You get to a certain age and you just can't do it anymore. If it were like at 40, bro, I'd be with you guys all the way. I just want to live, really good for 24 hours and not feel like I'm dying.
Yeah, so you can imagine, like, what if somebody posted, Rachel Maddow's home address or Keith Olbermann or Don Lemon, one of these left-leaning people, like, that'd be taken down in a second. But if it's somebody that the platform disagrees with, they looked at it and said, no, there's nothing wrong here. That tweet's allowed to stand. So this person, picture of their house, their home address, everything's been published online. And what do you think they are going to do with that information?
Yeah. So let's flip it, right? So had Keith Olbermann's address and a picture of his home been posted on Truth Social, right? Like a right-wing version of this, I think there'd be hell to be paid, right? And that's why we have to look at it from the lens of, like, it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. It's like, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. And again, like, who's going to be the arbitrator of truth? But we need somebody in there that could see past party lines and to make great decisions all the time. Maybe it's ChatGPT. I don't know.
The AI.
Definitely not the Microsoft AI.
Yeah. For real.
But I mean, it's just clear, even enforcement. I don't even think it's that. It's just even enforcement. Twitter has an anti-doxing policy. This woman was clearly doxed. Why didn't they take it down?
I agree. That it's just terrible, right? And doxing in
even
general
enforcement.
is just not something. Yeah, it's just evil, right? No matter who's in front of that. Yeah.
It's just
So
like hate speech policy. Like it's a bad thing to say kill all and then you fill in your race of choice here, no matter what side you're on. But like the phrase kill all whites was allowed to trend, or kill all Jews was allowed to trend on Twitter. But if you put any other race in there, it would have got banned immediately. Just even enforcement, I think, is the key here.
Is there any substance to this being a private company and they just can just do whatever they want and we have to deal with it?
That was always the defense. So that was always the defense, that they are a private company that can do whatever the heck they want, and if you don't like it, build your own. And that's why there's all these right-leaning alternatives to Twitter, because the left always had Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat. Literally every other social media platform is left-leaning, Reddit and the like, but that was always their defense. They're a private company. They can do whatever they want, which is sort of in contravention to what Jack Dorsey was spewing, because he said Twitter is the new public square. People should be allowed to say whatever they want. And then there's that giant asterisk that said, only if we agree with you.
Yeah.
And the Twitter files prove it. That's not my opinion. Twitter files prove it.
Yeah, they do. And I think that's one of the things that, like, again, like, Elon is coming off a little polarizing lately. But I think the fundamental thing, maybe it should be in the Twitter mission statement, right? Which is, I am a free speech absolutist, and I believe that this should be the town square, whether I agree with you or not. Period. Like, I think that's where we'd have a lot more success, and that's where I want to see it to go. Or that's where I would like to see it going. So let me ask you guys, in Twitter Files 1 and 2, how did you feel after, Chris, how did you feel after going through Twitter Files 1 and 2 and reading this? Did you feel like, what was your perception on everything?
My perception after was, first of all, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised in the least. I tend to follow things in tech, and I'm on Twitter a lot because that's where I get a lot of these stories. Like InfoSec Twitter, I've said it before, that's the only bearable part of Twitter's InfoSec Twitter. But all big tech is extremely left-leaning. It didn't surprise me in the least that this was happening. I think I, like you, Brian, was surprised that this evidence was left behind. I guess technically they couldn't legally get rid of it. I was surprised at that everything that the right was saying for years, and the mainstream media branded them as conspiracy theorists, that they were finally vindicated. That says, yes, Twitter was engaging in some underhanded stuff to try and censor conservatives, ban these opinions. So, yeah, I mean, I think the conservatives have felt vindicated, and it just confirmed what I already knew was going on.
So let me ask you also, as a follow-up question, what other social media site do you believe is heading down the path of doing the right thing all the time, outside of Twitter? Because I think we're getting there with Twitter. I could be wrong. You can disagree.
Currently out there?
Yeah, I don't think there's... I don't think the Twitter files changes anything. I think it's systemic, right? Because a lot of these companies come from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is in a very left-leaning part of the country. Just tech in general is very left-leaning, and people can't overcome their personal biases to do things like apply the rules evenly.
But it's a slippery slope, right? I mean, you control one, you try to be fair, it's whack-a-mole, right? And who's to say one argument is better than the other? Granted, you should have a baseline of the controls that you have in place. It's bad. It's hard. This is something that's just not going to go away easily, I don't think. So, depending on which side you are, yeah.
Yeah. And again, like we keep saying left-sided, but like had Trump won, right? And then the White House is banning and suspending accounts, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot to be said about that. I wish we had the...
Yeah, go ahead. No, please.
And so, do you think we have the ability, or does Elon have the ability to go back and, like 2016 to 2020, to look at all of the accounts that may have been shadow banned that would be like being pushed from the White House and that agenda? And in both cases, I still don't like it. I don't want that to happen. Period. I don't care who's in charge. I don't want that. I don't want government overreach. Period.
Yeah, between Twitter Files 1 shows the cozy relationship between the DNC, so not necessarily the White House, but the party that would eventually be in the White House. And then Part 11 that dropped yesterday was members of Congress actively asking for investigative journalists to be banned off the platform.
So
Maybe a topic for a future episode if this is well received.
when we get 23 views. I have a theory, and I don't know if this is across all platforms, but I would say I believe that Spotify is another open platform, and I think at this point in time, I think it's too difficult to censor audio and video like you could static text analysis. I could be wrong. I don't know if I could say the same about Apple Podcasts, but I do think that Spotify's there. What do you guys think?
I think Spotify refusing to drop Joe Rogan was a sign that they are more central, that they want to get the opinions out there and let people make up their own minds. There were a lot of calls for Joe Rogan to be banned. I forget, was it? I think
Neil
it was
Diamond.
COVID related, I think.
Yeah.
Or Neil Young, yeah.
Yeah. Was that a refusal, or was that just realizing that he has such a big cult following that they would have lost millions anyway?
It's both. It's like
That's reality here,
Sirius
right?
XM
So-
banning Stern, right?
Yeah.
It's the golden goose.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I would say Spotify. Yeah, I think. Well, I won't say anything about Spotify, but yeah, Spotify I would say is more fair than the other social media platforms.
Okay.
I mean, let's face it, right? I think Chris alluded this to as well, right? These platforms are there to make money. So one way or the other, they're going to sensationalize or block or allow something simply because it's a platform that has to make something on ads, right? All their things are based off of ad revenue, right? I mean, let's face it. So how do they get ad revenue, or how do they get revenue? Because it's either by membership, like Spotify does it, right? Oh, they actually do the free market. There's actually a free play inside there. So I don't know, but I think it's all about money at the end of the day.
That it is. I think I saw yesterday that Twitter is actually accepting political-based advertising. And back in the day, Jack Dorsey actually banned that from happening. And so now Elon's saying, I want a piece of that pie.
I don't think we're saying one thing is bad over the other. I think what we're saying is just fairness, right? Fairness to be able to post and not get blocked or shadow banned or put in this de-amplification or this blacklist. I think from our podcast, that's what we're saying here, and that's what we're sticking by is let's not create a platform that is exclusive but is inclusive of everyone's comments. And I think for everyone to learn, from us is that, we're not trying to say that we're lean left or we lean right. We just want to have a conversation, an intelligent conversation, like you said, Brian. And if we disagree, that's fine, because it's human nature to disagree with other people. Just know that you can still be friends.
Yeah. Let me think for myself. Just give me all the facts. Let me discern what I think is good versus bad.
Yeah. And I don't care what you say. My wife is always wrong, but she'll tell me I'm the one that's wrong. So, for all you listeners out there that have your significant others out there, wife or whatever, right? So that they're always right. Just know that right today.
Yeah, that's always one of those things. My wife, I think last night, she's like, you just like to always be right. And you just like, you're so argumentative. I'm like, we're literally having an argument about me being argumentative. Like, I feel like you're the one that wants to be right. And then we both ended up laughing and ate our dinner, so it was okay.
Yeah, I can't talk politics in my house because they're like, you're so this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I it's just how I see things and how I feel. If you want to have a different opinion, that's fine. I just won't eat with you.
All right, we're coming up on an hour here, so let's wrap it up here. So to wrap things up, we have a second generation of dad joke enthusiast in the Louis family, and the Twitter files show a bias towards conservatives. Much, much more to come if we get to cover this again. Probably we'll go back to our regular program next week, and we'll wait to do the next installment of this. But for now, that's all I have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find us all on LinkedIn, and links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to all our listeners and subscribers who rate us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is to search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. For my co-hosts Brian Deach and Glenn Medina, I'm Chris Louie. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next weekend as always. Have a nice day.
Bye, Felicia. Thanks, everyone.
I would say, yeah, if anyone listened to this and it was against everything in their soul and they got something out of it, I appreciate you more than you'll ever know.
You bet.
Thank you for taking the time.